So I think the best way for me to cover the basics is to essentially use the game's opening and tutorial as a basis, and I'll add on a few details as we go through where I feel they're useful. So now it's time to do a bit of simplifying against some nice slow enemies. We can lock on to targets by clicking the right stick. You can flick left and right on the stick while locked on to switch targets. The main thing I want to point out about lock on in this game is that it's a situational thing. Generally, sure, you'll want to use it. It does make defending a lot easier, and it'll make sure your attacks go in the right direction. But sometimes, especially when fighting multiple enemies at once, fighting without the lock on can let you move around and aim your attacks more freely. So play around with it to find out what works for you. And a final sneaky pro tip here about lock on: trying to lock on when you're unsure if there's enemies ahead is a good idea. For example, you can't lock on to friendly characters, and lock on works even if the enemies are hiding in the dark or behind some kinds of scenery. Moving on, we use our left and right hand equipment in this game using the shoulder buttons on the controller. So for our right hand, you've got a regular attack and a strong attack. Attacks and all other physical actions use stamina, which is your green bar. The regular attack is faster and weaker, the strong attack is slower and stronger. For our left hand, you can press the guard button to defend yourself. This works if you're holding a shield in your left hand or if you're two-handing a weapon. We'll talk about two-handing weapons in a minute. Your stamina will drain more depending on what you've used to defend and how hard you're getting hit. Stamina recharges real slow if you're still holding up your guard, so try and let your guard down in between attacks to recover it a bit more quickly. A couple of other things: you'll probably have started the game with a shield in your left hand, but it is possible to equip weapons here and use them. The guard button will become an attack button in that case, and if you equipped a pair of weapons that are the same type, like for the warrior, he starts with a pair of curved swords, then the guard button becomes a special dual weapon attack, which is really cool. Dodging next. Dodging is extremely useful in Elden Ring. It doesn't just move you out of the way, but it also makes you invincible for a brief moment. People online will often call this iframes. The invincibility is really short though, so you have to time it very carefully to successfully avoid attacks. Timing is something you have to learn for each enemy and each attack. The best advice I can give you here is to just try and hold your nerve and wait until the very last second before you roll. We'll talk about this a bit more later when we talk about combat in a bit more detail. To run in this game, you just hold the dodge button. You can run faster than most enemies in this game, and there's no shame in running off if you get into trouble. And another pro tip is to run through an area you've already cleared before if you don't want to fight all the enemies again. So the message here is telling us that we can equip up to 3 armaments in each hand at once and toggle between them, but the main thing to concentrate here is on two-handing our weapons. Basically, this increases the damage we do, and it does some other stuff like increase our stats, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But the two-handed increased damage means we're more able to break the enemy's guard. So if you just think about it, they have the same sort of stamina system that we do, so you can knock those shields away with a two-hand attack and get yourself big damage with a critical attack by just walking up and pressing regular attack once they're vulnerable. If you're finding the input to two hands quite tricky to do reliably, you can do it by holding the interact button first and then pressing the shoulder button. You can even hold shields with two hands and use them as weapons, which is pretty cool. Skills are probably one of the most poorly explained bits of the tutorial, I think. Pressing the skill button does the skill that's named in the bottom left corner of the screen. Most of the armaments you find in the game will have skills, and you will find ways to change or remove them as you go through the game. One thing to point out: if your left hand armament has a skill, it'll take priority over the right hand armament. So as an example, if we look at my guy here, at the moment I can do a skill called parry, which is the shield skill. So if I want to use my right hand skill, I have to either change my left hand equipment or I have to two-hand my right hand weapon. And now you can see the name's changed, and if I press the skill button, I'll do a different action. Skills all work differently. Some do an attack, some cast spells, others put you in a stance that changes your regular and heavy attacks. There's a lot of variety. Most skills in the game will drain your focus points, the blue meter, but not all of them do. If you want to find out more info about the skills, you can go into the equipment screen and look at your armaments. So we can see the focus points used is listed here as FP use, and if we press the switch display mid button, which is shown at the bottom of the menu, we'll get a more detailed description of the item, which includes the skill info right at the bottom here. Next, the tutorial tells us about stance breaks. So these are like a really powerful technique that helps you land more critical attacks against enemies. Every enemy essentially has an invisible stance meter. It's not exactly the same, but just think of it like another stamina bar. Every time you land a hit, it is drained. If you wait too long, it fills back up. If you land enough hits to empty the bar, the enemy will be stance broken, and then you can get a free critical attack on them. The moves that are effective at this are jumping attacks, charging attacks. To do a charge attack, you just hold the heavy attack button, and guard counters are also really good, and we'll talk about those in a sec. but I do want to just point out regular attacks are really not very effective at breaking stance, so it is something you're going to need to use heavy attacks for. So the final bit of tutorial we get now is about guard counters, and they are really good. As a new player, I highly recommend you use them a lot. How it works is you need to wait with your guard up until you've taken the impact of an attack, then press the heavy attack button. You can tell when you've done it right, it makes a specific noise and it does a huge amount of stance damage. You'll often get a critical very easily on the early game enemies. However, do need to be careful because although it works very nicely in the early game, before long you'll need to use it a bit more carefully. Some enemies will keep attacking even when you block, or they'll be able to hit you before you manage to hit them with your guard counter. Also keep an eye out because some enemies can guard counter you, so watch out for that. If you're very smart, you can guard counter their guard counter and feel like a boss. But that's it. Now it's time to head up these stairs, out that door, and out into the world. Good luck, friend.